Hoops Lounge Hangout. This is episode 32. We got a big show on tap. We're focusing this week with a little bit of Toronto Raptors talk, how they've been so good, what's happening, as well as Naismith moment, which you guys have all come to love, and the In the Post. So we got a lot coming up. As always, my name's Phil, joined by my two co-hosts. First, we got Mr. Mark.
Hi, my name's Mark, and I don't look like Miles Plumlee.
No, because technically that falls to me if you've watched our season-ending show.
Our cousins,
and our third member, Mr. Moda.
Hi, I'm Moda, and Kobe, can you please follow Kendall Marshall? He's a nice guy.
Poor Kendall Marshall. I'm kind of happy he got a spot, but anyway, so on today's show, we're focusing on the Toronto Raptors and how they've gone from being a team that a lot of people thought would be pretty bad, especially considering they traded their arguably best player, Rudy Gay, to being pretty good. They're now in a playoff position, leading the division. Moda, since you're joining us from overseas, our overseas correspondent, for those who haven't been following, Moda is now on the other side of the pond. He is now our affiliate that way. Moda, in terms of the Raptors, now Rudy Gay going away, a lot of shots freed up. Where do you think this really helped the Raptors, or do you think they're just kind of just playing on a hot streak right now?
Good point, man. In terms of let's just put something together here. If the playoffs started today, Toronto would play the Wizards, and they would in the first round, and they would beat them. They would beat them bad. This is because Rudy Gay opened up a lot of space. He was taking over almost 27 shots a game. That's Kobe numbers. You know, you don't shoot much in a team that needs to rotate the ball, or some like Jones and the post that needs the ball to play down low. So for him to be, even though players are saying no, it's not because of Rudy Gay that we're playing better, but I'd say yes because he opened up the space. He was hogging the ball too much. They're rotating the ball very well right now, and they're clicking together, and they're playing actually defense. And the worst part is that they're making Dwayne Casey look good. So that's really impressive. And it's not. I don't have anything against Casey, but it's just his decisions in the past 3 years, they were terrible. His shots he has for shot selections for his team were terrible too. So now this team is actually making him look good. So props to the Raptors and to the genius Sai Mujiri who made all this happen. So it's all about chemistry, you can see.
Yeah, no. And Mark, he was just bringing up the GM of the Raptors. I know you've been singing his praises ever since he's been brought over. Do you think the changes of the Raptors have been more just players growing up and into their skin? You know, we've seen the emergence of Terrence Ross, DeMar DeRozan taking a step, Valanciunas getting some shots now. Or do you think this is kind of a mastermind and putting the puzzle pieces together by this GM? Where do you personally attribute this success coming from?
I really think this is just the stars aligning. I mean, we've seen this before. Ujiri shipping Carmelo Anthony from Denver and that team coming together afterwards. Memphis coming together after, once again, Rudy Gay leaving. It's a matter of chemistry and they're passing the ball. Basketball is a very simple game when you pass the rock. They're getting like 10 more assists a game, 30 more passes per game since the trade. I think they're 8-2. This is not a fluke. They beat OKC. They beat Chicago. They beat New York. They beat Indiana. And I mean, I don't know if they're going to be able to beat Miami tomorrow night, but it's everybody coming together. They're all buying in. And now they have a bench. They added 3 or 4 key players on the bench. So now, they have guys filling in. Like I said, they're buying into the system. And Dwayne Casey, I like what Moda said there. I mean, he admitted to Zach Lowe, it was a really great piece by Zach Lowe and Grantland about the Raptors, but he admitted he hasn't changed the sets really. So it's not really like Dwayne Casey has changed things internally. It's Ujiri bringing in the right pieces and taking away the right pieces. And you also have to mention Colangelo. A lot of guys there, Colangelo brought in as well. But it's the guys buying in. It's the team chemistry, and they're really coming together. They're the third best team in the East out of nowhere.
Yeah, and definitely. I mean, the guys are making. The reason is now we can actually watch the Raptors. They look good when we watch the Raptors play, and it's not like that horrible team that we're used to. And it's just good basketball that they're playing. And I think it's also about the maturity of the players. So the past For the past years, they grew up and they now know how to play NBA ball. So it's I think it's a lot of things coming together. Rudy Gay trading him was a good tactical move, but there was a lot of emotion I think also involved for the other players for them to get involved into the game.
Yeah. No, for sure. And the one difference I've seen is well two parts. One is players who weren't getting enough shots are now getting shots. Guys like Valanciunas and Terrence Ross. Everyone knows me. I've been a big Terrence Ross fan ever since he's been drafted.
Mm-hmm.
They're finally getting shots. Terrence Ross is providing that three-point shooting they didn't have before when they had Rudy Gay and DeMar DeRozan. It was kind of more of a slasher team. And Valanciunas is finally getting his time to shine. And realistically, if you're going to invest this much in a player that's supposed to be your franchise center, you need to give him the touches. But the big part, actually, Mark, I'm happy you mentioned the assist part of it, is their point guard situation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for years, the Raptors, who's their last great point guard? Damon Stoudemire? I mean,
Mighty Mouse.
No, exactly. And he wasn't even a pass-first point guard. He almost led the league in scoring. So for years, they haven't had a guy to set him up. And now, not only is Kyle Lowry, in my mind, playing like an all-star, first of all, like his assists, rebounds, steals, he's just like a couple games I watched, he's just a monster, ball hawk. But bringing in Grievous Vasquez, as you said, Mark, bringing in some complementary pieces, they now have the ability for 48 continuous minutes to have a good starting point guard on the floor and guys who get people involved. I mean, you can even play Vasquez and Lowry at the same time because of Vasquez's size. It's a really interesting dynamic, and I think anytime you're able to control the ball, control the pace, and get your other players involved, you can't help but win. And then we're seeing the maturity of guys like Amir Johnson. Like, who would have thought Amir Johnson at the starting of this year would have been this good or this ready? Now, he's almost being spoken about as an untradeable player. Now, I think 2 years ago, people were like, who's going to take Amir Johnson? Why did they sign him for $7 million a year? It's that same argument with Wesley Matthews when they signed him, and for $7 million, they're like, how can you justify that? They understand the system and the value. Patrick Patterson, great guy in there. I just think that this team, now, I think they have a lot of talent, and they're fun, and I think they're going to get better. But in my eyes, they're still missing that quintessential superstar. I view DeRozan and Valanciunas as those really high-end second players, and I think their one problem is they have a whole lot of that. Yeah. Now, I'll throw it to you guys, kind of open field. Whoever wants to take this. Do you think the Raptors are in a place now where they can grab this group and kind of plug in as their GM's doing little complementary pieces, and it's enough to grow to be a contender? Or do you think that, because we all know that Toronto is not the hot spot for free agent landings, so has to come from the draft, and this is hurting their draft stock, right? I mean, when Mike and I were covering when we were talking about the Rudy Gay trade was that this is actually going to make them better, and it has. But, tanking for Wiggins isn't happening at this point. Do you think that Toronto is best served selling these guys high? Like Kyle Lowry right now could help a lot of teams. Grievous Vasquez could help a lot of teams. Patrick Patterson. There's a lot of guys outside of maybe DeRozan, Ross, and Valanciunas. Even DeRozan, if you really believe in Ross, depending how you want to do it. But do you think this team is better served kind of growing incrementally with what they have and assuming their foundation is there? Or do you think they're missing those pieces and they should kind of, I don't want to use the word tank, but tank?
Well, I mean, I'll give my answer quickly. You know what? You can't buy chemistry. What they have rolling right now is pretty magical. And the thing is, this team has not had a great, quote-unquote, great franchise since 2001. That's, 13 years ago? You do not want to upset your fan base who are happy for the first time in 13 years by tanking. That's going to destroy everything with people who connect with you. And on top of that, these guys are growing. They're young, so why not build on what they already have? If they throw that away to try to tank for Wiggins or whoever else, it could completely fall apart like it did for the Boston Celtics when they tried to get Tim Duncan. You never know when you roll that way. They got a good thing going right now. Work with it as well. You know what? I'm thinking right now, Andrew Wiggins is going to go into the pros, and then 3 years down the road, he's going to have to sign a second contract. He wants to play for Toronto. These guys are still going to be rolling 3 years from now if they keep building on what they have right now. Why not try to get him or someone else then?
Yeah, and the Raptors actually are good, are in a good situation financially. They're doing well right now. So if there's a trade about to happen this year, I think it's going to be with Kyle Lowry. because they brought in Vasquez, and Vasquez proved in Sacramento that he can play as a starting point guard. So
Mhm.
he can rotate the ball. He knows he clicks with Jonas, and he plays well as a starter. So the only guy that I think that might be moving is Kyle Lowry. But why would you do that if he's one of your top scorers? And you need that steady top scoring in your entire team. Like you're saying, they don't have that superstar, but they have guys that can just go off and score 25 to 30 points a night, one night, and then the others will score 12 to 15 points. So will compensate on other things. But if you have that one superstar that you're always relying on, you will always rely on in terms of scoring, but then the others uh, will just work it out. But who would you trade Kyle Lowry for? I don't see any
Well, the
other
thing
team
is,
willing to
if
give
you
up
trade him,
any.
right? I'm not sure you had much worry what you get back, because the idea is that, and I'll throw this one because I have one question for each of you guys with a little bit of a weird spin on it. Moto, when it comes to Kyle Lowry, he's done after this year. $6 million expiring contract. He's playing like an all-star. He's a very valuable piece that a lot of teams could trade for easily. Now, I'm one of these people that if you don't think you're going to keep him, you trade him for assets, and you don't let him walk for nothing. So the idea is that, is Kyle Lowry or Grievous Vasquez the future point guard of the Toronto Raptors, or do you think they're just placeholders, trade bait, and they're going forward with someone else?
I think Vasquez is definitely the point guard. Kyle Lowry, if I'm Masai, I'm gonna let him go because I'm knowing Kyle
Yeah, but
Lowry.
just for
He's
nothing? I
got,
mean, you need some kind of a
yeah,
draft pick.
exactly. No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's that he's going to get traded because he's not gonna let him go in the free agency and not get anything in return. So he's gonna try to play it out. But there's no team that's willing to also give up any draft picks because they know what's coming up next year, so they don't know. I don't see any team that's going to be willing to give up for a good point guard and against a future superstar, because the top 5 picks for next year are definitely going to be superstars, and they're comparing them already to the 2003 draft.
Oh, exactly. That's a super loaded draft, and I can't wait to cover that when it comes up. Mark, speaking of a little Canadian content, draft everything, we're talking about. Everyone's talking about Andrew Wiggins, and they want him to be there because he's a superstar. He's from the Toronto-ish area, Canadian, all this. I had a thought, and I wanted your 2 cents on it. You know, Andrew Wiggins is tough because you have to draft him, and as you said, he could sign for a second contract.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a part of me that looks at that team, and I'm like, where am I missing some potential there? I'm like, front court scoring. Would you not, if you're the Toronto Raptors, try to lowball the Cleveland Cavaliers for Anthony Bennett at this point? Because you probably wouldn't have to pay too much, but if he pans out, he's that guy, right? From Toronto, young, and he could play next to JV. I mean, if you don't have to give too much for him, would you consider trading for Anthony Bennett?
No.
Oh, apparently, like, they are trying to do a trade right now with Pau Gasol, so who knows what's happening in Cleveland right now. But, Dwayne Watson, a friend of ours, wrote an interesting piece on Bennett this week. I think it was on TSN, and basically talking about how he's lost the weight the last few weeks. He's been doing 2-a-days, finally recovering from all these injuries. So he's finally kind of getting in the swing of things. Obviously, his numbers aren't great, but he's slow on the pickup, and I don't know. That's a lot of pressure to go home to Toronto to play as well. I'd rather see him playing well before coming here because that's an added pressure on top of the pressure he already has. So I wouldn't want him right now.
I don't know, though, because I feel he's one of those guys that, because certain guys, if you go in the right situation, like Mike was alluding to in some of his articles there, they depict your success. And a lot of people say there's a lot of power forwards in Cleveland. He's playing right behind fellow Canadian Tristan Thompson. I mean, so for him to shine, he has to play the 3? Maybe, but he's a little big. I just feel that he's one of those guys that if Cleveland can get some good value for him, that he would be better suited getting minutes at that 4 position, because while he's not super tall, he does have a long wingspan, good standing reach, and he's very athletic. So, I don't know. I just feel that it's one of those things that if Cleveland holds on to him, it's going to be wasted talent. Like him and Thompson, because they both are going to have to give minutes, are never going to develop into what they should. Like, I think they're going to give minutes to Thompson, so that's probably going to happen, but I think Anthony Bennett should be swung for like a 2 or a 3, because if you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers, Dion Waiters and whoever their 3 is right now, there's like kind of this rotating door. I mean, there's not a ton of guys in the Raptors who you would just give up. Like would you trade DeMar DeRozan? Probably not. But I don't know. You don't feel that it would just have that kind of fan appeal that like at least you got the local guy and he still has that shiny new look from the first overall pick, even though it's a bit tarnished at this point?
I was a big fan of Anthony Bennett when he was in college, but for him to have that fan appeal, for him to have that local appeal, for him to bring in people to watch him, he needs to start playing basketball, and he's not right now. So whatever you're going to ship him, he's not putting up the numbers that he's supposed to be. He's the #1 draft pick. And there are already people that are already saying that he might be the biggest bust of the decade. So for him losing weight, that's the first one. I think it's also for him to understand the system, and it takes a lot of time to understand also Mike Brown's system in Cleveland, because he makes it very consistent on just one player, which is Kyrie Irving. The ball always has to go through him, but it's very different than college. So he needs to adjust to that system. It's going to take time. And if you ship him out, also, it's going to take time for him to adjust again. It's going to be a messy year for Anthony Bennett. But I know that if you give him the chance of the 10 minutes per game, he needs to show the coach that he's willing to play. But right now, he's not doing that. So wherever you're going to ship him, Raptors, LA, and it would be worse if he was sent to LA, because we know how people are going to...
way too much pressure at that point.
Exactly. So you don't want to take him to a big market. You want to take him to a smaller market. I wouldn't say that Toronto is a smaller market, but you want to take him to somewhere where people are actually going to welcome him, not just wait for him to take over.
Yeah. No, actually, if there's one spot I'd love to see him in is actually Houston, next to Dwight Howard, that 4 position. And there's a lot of talent they could take back, but that's another conversation.
They can take a seat for him. But, let's we can go on forever for this topic of Anthony Bennett, because he's driving me crazy.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, Toronto Raptors are doing a lot better. Fans are loving it. They're going to be in the playoffs, and a lot of young talent. Now, guys, it's time for that, one of my favorite times of the show. It's the Naismith moment with Mark Griffin. He does this every week, giving us a little bit of inside with some Canadian little innuendos when it comes to basketball. Mark, what do you have on tap for us this week?
Well, first, thanks, Phil, for the sound effects you got going there. So today I want to bring up one player. His name is Melvin Ejim. He plays for Iowa State Hawkeyes. He's from Toronto. He's actually originally from Nigeria, moved to Toronto when he was a kid. Raised in a single family, played high school ball in the States. Really amazing, talented player. He's a senior player at Iowa. He's averaging 18 and 8. He's a double-double machine, has been for a few years. He's only 6'6", but he can get it done. He's got an NBA body, jumps out of the roof. Interestingly enough, he's a Big Ten. Sorry, it's now called the Big 12. The Big 12 Scholar of the Year last year. He's got an A average. He's a history major. He's one of the smartest kids I've ever seen in college basketball. It kind of reminds me of Steve Nash, very much an intellectual that way. And his team is 13-0 right now. And I was talking to a friend of mine. I'm going to dig up my Twitter account here just for a second, because he's a big Iowa State fan. His name's Daryl Frierson, and his Twitter handle is TheGame. And he told me a few things about Melvin. He said Melvin, his game is a lot like Charles Barkley. He's not a big guy, but he plays like one. And also, he reminded me that the part of the Canadian invasion is his teammate is Naz Long from Mississauga, Ontario as well. So there's a lot of Canadians in college basketball. Ejim's probably going to be drafted, I'm guessing, somewhere later in the first round. Like I said, he's got an NBA body. His attitude is right. He's a workaholic in the gym. I think he needs to be in a system like in San Antonio or OKC, where he gets an opportunity to blossom over a few years, because he needs to learn the NBA game. But he's got the skill, he's got the right attitude, and I think he can play in the league for a long time if he gets the opportunity to. So remember that name, Melvin Ejim from Iowa State.
Nice. All right, so it looks like we've been learning a little bit of Canadian content. Now it's time for the big boys to rock, and a little bit of episode of In the Post. So we're gonna battle it out. It's time to go. Mark, as always, the invigilator between the two battle-tested warriors, myself, Phil, and Mr. Moda. Mark, as always, we have 3 questions going each way, and the other will have a chance to rebut. What do we have on the tap today for this one?
Okay, so Phil, question 1. In their prime, who would win this battle? CP3 or Allen Iverson?
CP3. I'm going to give it to that one because I feel he's a bit stronger, about the same height. I feel he's a little more stable. Jump shots, similar-esque, and I feel he's low to the ground enough to not fall for as many of those cuts. I feel Allen Iverson gained a lot by playing the 2 guard and having taller people, slower people guarding him. I'm not taking away from his talent, but I'm going to go with CP3 on this one just because I feel overall better rebounder, better. I just think overall he brings more to the table.
I completely disagree. I just have to say, I just have one thing to say: 2001 finals, and that's it. 2001 MVP, that's it.
I'm not saying he's not a good team, but no. But at the same point, just look at that. What was it, 2004 or whatever, when Chris Paul was in New Orleans? Who was the best player on that team? Like, he took a really bad team that didn't play defense either. Like, at least Allen Iverson had a whole team that just played defense. These guys had nothing. I don't know. Like I'll totally give you that Iverson is the better scorer. Like every day, you totally have that from me. But everything else.
Oh, you can't say that he's just the better scorer. Allen Iverson was the lead steal. Was the lead steals and was the lead leader in steals in 2001 too. That's why he got the MVP. Mm-hmm. And he was always also candidate for the defensive player of the year for multiple times, but that time it was Ben Wallace that was taking over every time with his block shot. So.
The fro. But yeah, well, no, and on top of that, what was actually underrated about Iverson a lot was his assist numbers. He routinely would have like about high 6s, low 7 assists a game, and if you looked at overall in the league, that was actually top 10.
Yeah.
So because of his scoring, you know what? I see where you go with this, where you're going with this one, but just because how I view a team and the value, I don't like my point guards being my best scorer, so I'm going with CP3. But that's my team. But I can see your point.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So first question from Moda: does Blake Griffin finish the season as a Clipper, or do you do a Melo Love miscellaneous trade?
No, Blake is too much of a hot commodity for the Clippers. He's definitely staying with the Clippers. There's no way they're gonna give him up just because he's not just a talented player and he's learning the game, but he's also a guy that brings in fans, whether they're local and international fans. He made the Clippers now look good against the Lakers. So I'm saying he's sticking over there. If they're gonna trade anybody with the Clippers, I think it's DeAndre Jordan who's gonna get shipped out.
Yeah, I don't know. I see what you mean, but I kind of like put parallel Blake Griffin's production on the court with his production on the television, his Kia commercials. I mean, they're fun. It's interesting to watch. You know, it makes you smile. But at the end of the day, you're still driving a Kia. So I mean. You know, I don't know. I just don't believe in Blake Griffin deep in the playoffs. Like, if I'm against San Antonio really deep down, I need a bucket. I just don't think Blake delivers for me. This is why, like, I'll take Love, Aldridge. Even Anthony Davis I'll take over him right now. I just think that Blake Griffin is a fun guy. He sells a lot of tickets. He's definitely, like, a good player, great player, but I don't know, great. But I just think while he's getting better at certain aspects, to me, he's still a product of Chris Paul. I mean, he'll have his good games without Chris Paul. I agree with you, DeAndre Jordan needs to go because, number one, you can't finish games not being able to hit free throws. That really hurts them. And number two, I think him and Blake Griffin is a little bit repetitive on the offensive side of the ball. Actually, that's being really kind to DeAndre Jordan, saying that he actually participates in the offensive side of the ball. But I think that ultimately Blake Griffin should be moved. If I'm the Clippers and I go to Minnesota, I don't know how this love for Blake thing hasn't happened. Love would sign in LA in a second. Blake Griffin's on a contract. Minnesota would have him long term. I'm gonna have to look. Will he stay? I'll agree with you. Yes. Should he? No.
Okay, Phil. Question number 2. We're about halfway through the season. Who gets that ping pong ball and gets the number 1 pick?
Ping pong ball, number 1 pick. So we're assuming. Can't assume anything. Well, David Stern, no longer commissioner. It's gonna be. I don't know. I'm just saying. Well, if you don't believe in
your Ewing theories, okay.
Yeah, my Ewing theories. Looking up and down, I'm saying. I don't want to say it, man, because I hate it. Because it's on your hat. I'm saying the Knicks, man. I just think the Knicks. Look, if I'm right with the Ewing theory, they fit perfectly into the mold. I know. But at the same point, so do the Lakers, right? The Lakers fit in that mold as well. You know what? No, I take it back. The Lakers take it because I think the if you go by any kind of theory, the Knicks have dug themselves in this hole, and the Lakers just need Kobe help. So I'm going against the grain and against logic. I'm saying the Lakers get the number 1 pick this year, and I somehow think also they pass on Wiggins. I think they go Parker if they get number 1.
Probably. They will need a more ready guy, but yeah.
Exactly.
I agree, but I don't know because they're discussing also changing the system of the draft. So a Laker number 1 pick can work, can be possible, which I think never happened in the past 20 years. Almost.
Well, no, because they've always been way too good. It's kind of like the Yankees.
Yeah.
They spend all this money and they just have these terrible picks and they just buy their talent.
Exactly.
But I don't know. I honestly think, as much as I hope it's not true for the NBA, that's kind of like a best case scenario. Like you can't afford to have Boston and LA have bad teams.
Yeah.
You know, like for the NBA to survive well, your best teams cannot be like Sacramento's and Milwaukee's. Like even though they're not. But I'm just saying it. Like your big markets have to do fairly well, and I know in New York they're both tanking. In LA, you know the Clippers are your best one, but I see tons of holes in that team. I just think there's going to be this kind of resurgence, and you know when it comes to the cap space, like imagine the Lakers are able to draft a guy like that, and then they have money to throw at a free agent.
Yeah.
You know, having that number 1 pick, Kobe, and whoever they get from, I guess, purging Pau Gasol. I don't know. So I'm going to say the Lakers on this one.
Okay. Moda, question number 2. Is John Wall a superstar point guard in the making or just a really fast, good player?
He's a really fast, good player. He's not a superstar in the making just because of his attitude. I think because I've been treating that ever since June. I've been saying that, and a lot of people are just not agreeing with me. Tony Parker is definitely the best point guard in the league, and you can see that with the numbers the other day. The other day, the Spurs were playing against the Clippers, and the Clippers didn't have Chris Paul, and they were winning in halftime by 23 points. Just saying, but nothing. I'm not going to add to this. I'm going to go back to the question. John Wall.
Such a homer.
John Wall is definitely a really good player, but he's not a superstar caliber just because he needs to be able to learn the game. He needs to make his teammates better. But he's not. He's just focusing on his own show, and that's why he's just a fast, good player.
Yeah, because to me, I kind of see him in that Rudy Gay kind of thing. Like, I think he'll add more because he's a point guard, but I think he's one of those guys that it's enough talent to be, like, so tempting. You want to give him so many shots, so many times with the ball in his hands, but at the end of the day, you're like, oh, what did you do? You know, like, there's way too many of those, and I feel he's one of those guys that they're going to pay him so much money and give him such prominence that, like, I think he's going to keep that team in the middle of the pack for years, and I feel that, honestly, for this, I know it's not a popular thing, but I think they should trade him. Like one kid I was thinking of, actually, Boston wants to get rid of Rondo for Wall. I think Boston does that.
Yeah, that could work. That could work too. Similar salaries, so yeah, that could
Yeah,
work.
and then it's a new spot, and then with a new coach there in Boston, he gets a new young player, and he can dance the whole time.
Yeah.
John Wall. Yeah. All right. So yeah, no, I completely agree. I just think he's a really good player, but if he's my franchise player, I'm in a lot of trouble, and I'm not liking it. So I'm happy someone agreed with me on John Wall because I feel he gets way
Too
too
much.
much fandom for what he actually does.
Yeah.
He shoots a really low percentage, and I don't know. Yeah. Okay, so we'll agree on this one.
Okay. So Phil, your third and final question. If your name is Andrew Wiggins, right now are you considering sticking around Kansas for one more year?
That's
Wow.
really good, man.
I'm glad I didn't get that question.
It's tough, right? Because all these supposedly good teams are terrible now, like the Lakers, the Knicks, and all that. So this is one of those years where you could be a high draft pick and land on what next year is a contender, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not as bad as like when Tim Duncan came in the league. David Robinson was hurt the whole year. They got the #1 pick away from Boston, and then and then they just skyrocketed because they still had Robinson. Now you have Duncan. I can see a similar thing. I think he's going to go top 3 either way. So it's a question of, do you think your game's developed enough? Like, it's not a question of seeding and draft position because he knows he's super high anyways. I've seen enough progression from his first couple games to his games now that I think his learning curve would get topped out. Like, by the time he finishes up, I think he's going to be so good that how much he can grow next year, he's just going to be like a third into the season, like this is too easy. Like he's going to be just wrecking people. And to truly progress, I think you have to constantly have that type of competition. I mean, his teammate, Joel Embiid, or however you pronounce it, I think he's one of those guys who should stay another year. But Andrew Wiggins, I think, just because I think his learning curve is at a good level, I think he has to come out.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Moda. Moda, we got our final question of In the Post directed at you. Sticking on the topic of Andrews, Andrew Bynum, is he a worthwhile addition to a contender or a locker room cancer?
Our first show, we said we had a bet that who would play more, Ray Golden or Andrew Bynum. Some of us here said Andrew Bynum. I'm not gonna mention the name.
I'm raising my hand. Raising my hand.
Andrew Bynum. I think he should.
I'm not part of this conversation.
I think he should stop playing basketball. I think he should start just bowling. What he
His
loves.
professional bowling career.
Yeah, because that's what he said. He actually said in an interview he never liked basketball. So
and he's not even injured right now, which is the funny part, right?
I would put him with a contender, but he's just a mess in the locker room. He will just kill the chemistry in the game. So he would need to be in a team where someone would tell him off and he would make him actually shut up to be able to play and just play. So I think if he goes back to the Lakers, maybe he will do an impact. But other than that, I don't see him going back to the NBA just because of all that fiasco he did in Cleveland.
Okay, well, let's just say it as a runner idea, because I think he fits beautifully in OKC personally. Like if OKC offered like Perkins and Perry Jones, 2 expiring guys, well, like a rookie on a good deal, and Perkins, does Cleveland have to think about that one?
No, Cleveland would give him up for anybody.
Yeah.
To be honest, right now they would give him up for anybody. They basically told him to stay home, don't play. So they would take anybody's offer. But if I'm OKC, why would I trade Kendrick Perkins, who knows the system?
Because he's useless.
He is useless, but
Steven Adams is the better center on that team.
Yeah, but he is definitely bringing.
So is Nick Collison, to be honest.
He has playoff experience. That you can't change. That you can't replace.
Yeah, so did Mark Madsen. Doesn't mean it's a good playoff experience.
Well, he won with the Celtics, but okay. I'm just saying if I'm a manager of any team in the NBA, I wouldn't take Andrew Bynum at all, at all.
Except for if you're the Sacramento Kings, because he
Yes.
fits perfectly next to Boogie Cousins and Rudy Gay.
Yes. That's a
Imagine
reality
that
TV
front
show
court.
right there.
Imagine that front court of Andrew Bynum, Boogie Cousins, and Rudy Gay. They would kill each other. It would just be like internal fights on the court. It'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And it'd be amazing because Shaq's a part owner, right? Shaq
Yeah.
now has Boogie Cousins and Andrew Bynum. It's like a dream come true. It's like this team you walk into and you're like, it's the Monstars. But then you realize they're just these little aliens.
I think they should get Doug Christie and his wife back and just make a huge reality TV show about the Kings.
Oh,
I would
man.
watch that every week.
Oh, yeah.
Sacramento at night. I like that one. I like that one. All right, well, that was a good back and forth in the post. Mark is always doing a fantastic job keeping the swords away from each other with Moda and I. Guys, when we're looking for what's coming up this week, because I know we have a lot of fun stuff, what's on your plates in terms of Hoops Loungeness?
On my end, I'm wrapping up an article, like a feature article about Jonas Valanciunas, keeping on the Raptors theme. Basically, I did an interview with him last year. It's going to be in the article, talking about how he's grown as a player. I mean, these last few weeks playing against guys like Tyson Chandler, Joakim Noah, the whole who Indiana? Who's Indiana sent him?
Roy Hibbert.
Roy Hibbert playing, going head to head with these guys and not backing down. He's really growing as a player, really blossoming in the last few weeks. And one thing I wanted to mention about Toronto is they have a very easy schedule the next 2 months, so it's something to really watch, see how they play the next 2 months. But Jonas Valanciunas really coming into his own, so I'll have a piece up on him. They're calling him, there's T-shirts going around saying, "My name is Jonas," from the old Weezer song, so he's really getting a cult status in Toronto and around the league, so it's nice to see him coming into his own.
That's cool. On my end, I have just one thing to mention. Everybody who's not been watching the Pelicans, I think you should start watching them. They're playing really well. But there's this cool thing that happened in the past month where Tony Parker and Nicolas Batum recommended Alex Aginsa, who's a French player of the French national team, and they recommended him to come in to the NBA to be Pelicans GM. And now he's been playing really well. The other day, that when he played against Indiana, he had a career high of 18 points, dunked on Roy Hibbert, and it's a great addition to the Pelicans, especially with Anthony Davis, because they have now a really solid front court.
Yeah. He's an interesting player. Well, he's been in the league a few years at this point, but yeah, he's played.
He was bouncing on and off between Dallas, Portland, and the Raptors, and then he went back to France. But now he's back in the NBA. So
he's got a
good center. He's a good center. He knows how to play, but he wasn't in a good fit in any team because Dallas had a good centers back in that time, and he was going to be taking Dirk Nowitzki's time, and then Amir Johnson on the other side with the Raptors. So it was a tough situation.
Yeah, and I can't help but say it, but I'm starting to like the Pelicans. By the way, it's I'm a big Anthony Davis fan. I've been watching him a lot. Drew Holiday, Eric Gordon, and Tyreek Evans off the bench is really playing well.
Watch the unibrow.
I know. But so this Wednesday will be my first episode of Off the Wire. For those who haven't heard me blab about it, I'm basically going to take the top 5 stories of the previous week and break them down. We're going to give you links, a short synopsis, and a video guiding you through, so to get you guys caught up with the NBA outside of what's happening here. So I'm going to take some of the best articles off the wire, bring them to you, so it's a one-stop shop here on hoopslounge.com. So listen, guys, this has been another fantastic show. So I want to thank Mark Moda, and you can always follow us on all of our social media.